My name is Avery Miller. I am 24 years old and I live in the city. I sat at the dinner table, my hands trembling in my lap. The air in the dining room was thick and heavy. We were all there, Mom, Dad, my brother Noah, and Grandpa. I had just asked a simple question about my bank account. I just wanted to know where the money I had worked for since high school had gone. My father didn't look at me. He looked at his steak. He cut into it calmly. Then, without raising his voice, he said the sentence that broke the room. "We spent your savings on someone better." The silence was instant. It was cold. My mother looked down at her plate, refusing to meet my eyes. Noah shifted in his seat, looking guilty. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest hurt. I looked at my father, trying to understand. "Better than me," I whispered. He finally looked up. His eyes were empty. He didn't care. But before he could speak again, a chair scraped against the wood floor, loud and sharp. Grandpa stood up. His face was red with anger. He slammed his hand on the table and pointed a shaking finger at my father. "Name them," Grandpa demanded, his voice shaking the walls. "You tell me right now who is better than your own daughter." That dinner was the end of my family as I knew it. But the betrayal didn't start that night. It started years ago, in the silence. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Avery Miller. I am 24 years old. I learned very early that in my house, silence was the only way to survive. If I was quiet, I didn't get yelled at. If I was invisible, I didn't get disappointed. My brother Noah was different. Noah was the sun. My parents orbited around him like planets. If Noah sneezed, my mother was there with a tissue and a warm cup of tea. If I had a fever, I was told to stop complaining and go to school. It started with small things. I remember being 7 years old. It was a Tuesday. I woke up hungry. The smell of bacon was drifting up the stairs. My stomach growled, a loud, empty sound in the quiet room. I got dressed quickly, pulling on my jeans and a t-shirt that was getting a little too tight. I went downstairs, hoping for a hot breakfast. When I walked into the kitchen, the table was set. But there were only 3 plates. My father was reading the newspaper. My mother was standing by the stove, flipping pancakes. Noah was sitting at the table, already eating bacon. "Good morning," I said. My voice was small. My father turned a page of the newspaper. He didn't look up. My mother glanced at me over her shoulder. "Oh, Avery, you're up. Grab a banana on your way out. We're running late for Noah's soccer practice." I looked at the pancakes. I looked at the bacon on Noah's plate. "Can I have a pancake?" I asked. "There isn't time," Mom said, sliding a fresh, hot pancake onto Noah's plate. "Noah needs his energy. He has a big game." "But I'm hungry," I said. "Don't be selfish, Avery," Dad grumbled from behind the paper. "Your brother is an athlete. He needs protein. Just eat some fruit." I walked to the fruit bowl. The bananas were brown and mushy. I didn't take one. I just grabbed my backpack and walked out the door. I walked to the bus stop alone. I sat on the bus alone. My stomach hurt from hunger all day, but I didn't say a word to anyone. That was the lesson. Noah needed things. I was just there. As we got older, the gap between us became a canyon. Noah was the promising one. That was the phrase my father used. Noah shows so much promise. I got straight A's in school. I brought home report cards with perfect scores. I would leave them on the kitchen counter, hoping someone would see them, hoping someone would say, "Good job, Avery." They would stay there for days. Eventually, they would get covered by mail or coffee stains or Noah's sports schedules. Finally, I would throw them in the trash myself. Noah got C's, sometimes D's when Noah brought home a bad grade. It was a crisis. My parents would sit at the table with serious faces. "The teacher isn't explaining it right," Mom would say. "We need to get him a tutor," Dad would decide. "He has so much potential. We can't let him fall behind." They spent hundreds of dollars on tutors for Noah, math tutors, English tutors. They bought him a brand new computer because his old one was too slow for studying. I did my homework on the floor of my room, using a library book I had to renew 3 times. I taught myself algebra because I was too afraid to ask for help. I knew what the answer would be if I asked. "Figure it out yourself, Avery. We're busy with Noah." I became the ghost in my own house. I learned to pack my own lunches because Mom forgot to buy things I liked. I learned to walk to school, even in the rain, because Dad didn't want to drive 2 different routes, and Noah's school was in the other direction. I remember one winter when I was 12. It was snowing hard. The wind was biting. I was standing by the door, my coat zipped up to my chin. "Dad," I called out. He was in the living room, watching TV. "What? It's snowing really hard. Can you drive me to school?" He sighed, a loud, heavy sound that made me feel like I was a burden just for existing. He didn't even turn his head. "The bus runs in the snow, Avery. It's good for you, builds character." 10 minutes later, I saw him warming up the car. I thought maybe he had changed his mind. My heart lifted a little. I walked toward the car. "Get back," he said, waving his hand at me through the window. "I'm taking Noah. He has a project to carry. He can't take it on the bus." I watched them drive away. The tail lights disappeared into the white snow. I walked to the bus stop. The snow melted into my boots. My toes went numb. I cried, but the tears froze on my cheeks. I wiped them away angrily. I promised myself I wouldn't cry for them again. They didn't hate me. That would have been easier. Hate is a passion. Hate takes energy. They just didn't care. I was furniture. I was a background character in the movie of Noah's life. By the time I was 16, I had stopped asking for anything. I stopped asking for rides. I stopped asking for money for clothes. I stopped asking for love. I realized that if I was going to survive, I had to do it alone. I had to be my own parent. I had to be my own cheerleader. I became hard. I became quiet. I watched them pour their love and money into Noah, and I learned to expect nothing. But the silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It was full of things unsaid. It was full of my father's indifference and my mother's dismissive glances. I was the invisible backbone. I did the dishes so Mom wouldn't complain. I folded the laundry so Dad wouldn't yell about the mess. I kept the house running while they focused on Noah. And they never noticed. They just assumed the dishes washed themselves. I was alone in a house full of people. And that loneliness was colder than the snow. When I turned 16, I got a job. I didn't ask my parents for permission. I just walked into a diner 3 miles away and asked for an application. The manager was a kind woman named Brenda. She looked at my shoes, which were worn out, and my coat, which was too small. "You willing to work weekends?" she asked. "I'll work any time," I said. "Evenings, weekends, holidays." "You're hired," she said. That job became my escape. It wasn't glamorous. I washed dishes. I bussed tables. I smelled like grease and old coffee every night. But for the first time in my life, I felt seen. Brenda noticed when I worked hard. "Good job on those tables, Avery," she would say. She would slip me an extra slice of pie at the end of the shift. "You're a hard worker, honey. You're going to go far." Those words were like water to a dying plant. I started saving every penny. My friends were going to the movies on Friday nights. They were buying new jeans and going to concerts. I said no to everything. "Come on, Avery, it's just one night," my friend Sarah said. "I can't," I told her. "I have a shift." "You always have a shift," she said, disappointed. She was right. I always had a shift. I worked at the diner on weekends. After school, I filed papers at a local insurance office. During the summers, I babysat for 3 different families. I was tired. My feet ached constantly. My hands were dry and cracked from washing dishes. But every Friday, when I got my paycheck, I felt a spark of pride. It was my money. I earned it. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody could say I didn't deserve it. One evening, my father came into the kitchen while I was counting my tips. I had a jar of cash on the table. He stopped and looked at it. His eyes widened a little. "That's a lot of ones," he said. "It's from the diner," I said, continuing to count. "I'm saving for college, and for an apartment after." He pulled out a chair and sat down. It was rare for him to sit with me. "You know, Avery," he said, his voice unusually soft. "Keeping cash in the house isn't safe. If we get robbed, it's gone." I paused. I was going to open a bank account. "I can help you with that," he said. He smiled. It was a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. It made my chest tight. "I have an account at the main bank in the city. I can open a sub-account for you. I'll be the custodian since you're a minor, but it will be your money. It will be safe." I looked at him. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that he was looking out for me. I wanted a father who protected me. "You promise it's my money?" I asked. "Of course," he said, looking offended. "I'm your father. I'm trying to teach you financial responsibility. You work hard. I respect that." He respected me. Those words hooked me. "Okay," I said. "Okay, Dad." The next day, we went to the bank. I handed over my jar of cash. I handed over my paychecks. We set up the account. For the next 7 years, that account was my lifeline. I didn't stop working. Through high school and then through college, I worked. I went to a state university because it was cheaper, even though I got into better schools. I didn't want to take out huge loans. My parents paid for Noah to go to a private college out of state. They paid for his dorm, his meal plan, his fraternity dues. They bought him a car for his graduation. He needs to network, Dad said. He needs to make connections. I took the bus to my classes. I packed peanut butter sandwiches. I worked the night shift at a library filing books. Every month, I deposited money into the account my father helped me set up. I watched the number grow. 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. By the time I was 23, I had saved nearly $35,000. It was my freedom fund. It was the money I was going to use to move out, to put a down payment on a small condo, to finally start my real life away from the silence of my childhood home. It was a symbol of every shift I worked while Noah was partying. It was every movie I skipped. It was every pair of shoes I didn't buy. I trusted my father. I thought that despite everything, despite the neglect, the favoritism, the coldness, there was a line he wouldn't cross. I thought he respected my work. He saw me leave the house at 6 a.m. and come back at 10 p.m. He knew I was a fool. The family never asked how I was managing. They never asked why I looked so tired. They only called me when they needed something. Avery, can you come walk the dog? We're going to visit Noah. Avery, did you remember to send Grandma a card? Avery, pick up some milk on your way over. I did it all. I kept the peace. I kept working. And I kept saving, putting my trust in a man who had never earned it. It was a Tuesday evening in November. It was raining again. Just like that day, I waited for the ride that never came. I was living in a tiny studio apartment in the city. It was barely a closet. The radiator clanked and hissed. The window rattled in the wind. But it was mine. I paid the rent with my current job as a junior copywriter. It wasn't a great job, but it was a start. I was sitting on my second-hand futon, my laptop open on my lap. I was looking at real estate listings. I had finally decided. I was going to do it. I was going to use my savings for a down payment on a real apartment. A place with a bedroom door. A place with a kitchen that wasn't in the living room. I felt a thrill of excitement. I had $35,000. It was enough. Okay, I whispered to myself. Let's check the exact number. I navigated to the bank's website. I typed in my username and password. My fingers knew the rhythm by heart. The page loaded. The little blue wheel spun. Then the numbers appeared. I stared at the screen. I blinked, sure that my eyes were tired. I leaned closer. Available balance, $42.15. My heart stopped. Literally stopped. I felt a cold wave wash over my body, starting at my scalp and rushing down to my toes. No, I said aloud. No, that's a glitch. I hit the refresh button. The wheel spun again. Available balance, $42.15. My hands started to shake. I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I clicked on transaction history. The screen filled with lines of red text. Withdrawals, transfers. Payments, transfer to Chase checking, $5,000 August 12th. Payment, University Bursar, $8,500 September 1st. Withdrawal, Best Buy, $2,200 September 15th. Transfer to Chase checking, $4,000 October 2nd. The list went on and on, for months. Someone had been draining my account. Systematically, deliberately, I looked at the dates. September 1st. University Bursar. That was a tuition payment, but I wasn't in school. I had graduated a year ago. Noah was in school. Noah was starting his master's degree. Best Buy, $2,200, a laptop, a TV. My head was spinning. I felt sick. I ran to the bathroom and dry heaved over the toilet, but nothing came up, just bile and panic. I scrambled back to the computer. I looked at the authorization. Authorized by custodian, Robert Miller, my father. He hadn't been hacked. He hadn't made a mistake. He had done this. I sat there in the dark apartment, the light of the laptop screen illuminating my horrified face. He stole it. He stole my filing jobs. He stole my dishwashing shifts. He stole my weekends. He stole my frozen toes and my cracked hands. He took 7 years of my life and gave it away. I picked up my phone. I dialed his number. It rang and rang. Hello, his voice was casual. He was probably watching TV. I couldn't speak. My throat was closed up. Hello, is anyone there? He asked. I hung up. I couldn't do this over the phone. If I spoke to him now, I would scream until my voice broke. I needed to see him. I needed to see his face when I asked him why. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in a chair by the window, watching the rain. I felt like that little girl again, waiting for a ride. But this time, I wasn't going to cry. The shock was fading. The hurt was fading. Something else was taking its place. A cold, hard anger. A rage that had been building for 20 years. I printed every page of the transaction history. The printer whirred in the quiet room, page after page of theft. I put them in a folder. I was going home. I drove to my parents' house on Saturday. The sky was gray and heavy. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Noah's car. He was home for the weekend. Of course he was. I walked up the front path. The house looked the same as always. Perfectly manicured lawn, the wreath on the door, the picture of a happy family. I used my key and walked in. "Avery, you're just in time for lunch," Mom called out from the kitchen. Her voice was cheerful, she didn't know. I walked into the kitchen. Mom was making sandwiches. Dad was sitting at the table. Noah was there too, and there it was. Sitting on the table in front of Noah was a brand-new, sleek silver laptop. It looked expensive, top of the line. Noah looked up and smiled. "Hey Ave, look at this beast. Dad got it for me for the master's program. The graphics card is insane." I looked at the laptop. $2,200. I recognized the price from my bank statement. I looked at my father. He was chewing a pickle, looking calm, looking relaxed. "Nice," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat. "It looks expensive." "We want Noah to have the best tools," Mom chirped, placing a plate of sandwiches on the table. "Sit down, honey, eat." I didn't sit. I stood by the door. I clutched my purse where the folder was hidden. "Noah," I said, "can you give us a minute? I need to talk to Mom and Dad." Noah frowned. "We're eating lunch." "Now," I said. I didn't yell, but there was something in my voice that made Noah stop chewing. He looked at Dad. Dad sighed. "Avery, don't start drama, just sit down." "I'm not sitting," I said. "Noah, please leave the room." Noah rolled his eyes, grabbed his sandwich, and walked out. "Whatever, weirdo." When he was gone, the room went quiet. The refrigerator hummed. I looked at my father. I checked my account on Tuesday. He didn't flinch. He didn't look surprised. He just took another bite of his sandwich. "And," he said. "And it's empty," I said. $35,000. Gone. Mom stopped wiping the counter. She turned around slowly. She didn't look shocked either. She looked annoyed. "It's not gone, Avery," Dad said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "It was used." "Used?" I repeated. "Used for what?" "I didn't spend it." "We used it," Dad said. He said it so simply, as if he had borrowed a cup of sugar. "You stole it," I said. "Watch your tone," he snapped. His face darkened. "I didn't steal anything. I am the custodian on that account. It is family money." "It is my money," I shouted. My voice cracked. "I worked for that. I scrubbed dishes. I filed papers. I missed everything to save that money." "And we needed it," Mom cut in. She walked over and stood next to Dad. A united front. Noah's tuition for the master's program was more than we expected, and he needed supplies. That computer. "You bought him a computer with my money?" I asked, pointing at the empty chair where Noah had been sitting. "You paid his tuition with my savings." "He has a future, Avery." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "He is going to be an engineer. He needs opportunities. He needs a leg up." "And what about me?" I asked. "Don't I need a future? Don't I need a home?" Dad looked at me with a look of pure disdain. "You," he scoffed. "You're a survivor, Avery. You always have been. You know how to scrape by. You're already fine. You have a job. You have that little apartment. You don't need the help. Noah does." I stared at him. There it was, the truth. In their eyes, my strength was my punishment. Because I was capable, because I didn't complain, because I took care of myself, I deserved nothing. And because Noah was needy, because he was the golden boy, he deserved everything, even the blood from my veins. "I was saving for a house," I said quietly. "You can wait," Mom said dismissively. "You're young, you can save again. Be supportive of your brother, don't be so greedy." Greedy. I had worn the same winter coat for 5 years. I had eaten ramen noodles so I could save $5, and they called me greedy. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, final click, like a lock turning. I looked at them, really looked at them. They weren't my parents. They were thieves. They were strangers who had been living in my house. "You think this is okay?" I asked. "It's done," Dad said. "Stop making a scene. Sit down and eat your sandwich." I looked at the sandwich. I looked at my father. "No," I said. I turned around and walked out of the kitchen. "If you walk out that door, don't expect us to help you when you fail." Dad yelled after me. I didn't stop. I walked out the front door. I got in my car. I didn't cry. I was done crying. I drove straight to the one place I knew I would be heard. I drove to Grandpa's house. The war had started. And they had no idea who they were fighting. They thought they were fighting the quiet, invisible Avery, the girl who shrank. But that girl was gone. They had stolen her money, but they had given her something else. They gave me a reason to burn it all down. I sat in my car at the end of the block, the engine idling. The rain was hammering against the roof, a relentless, deafening drumbeat that matched the pounding in my chest. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers had gone numb. I stared through the windshield, the wipers swishing back and forth, smearing the streetlights into blurry streaks of yellow and orange. I had just left them. I had just walked out of my childhood home after being told that my life savings, 7 years of sweat, missed parties, and cheap meals was gone. Stolen, used to buy a laptop for a brother who had never worked a day in his life. I should have been driving away. I should have been halfway to the highway, putting as many miles as possible between me and the people who called themselves my parents. But I couldn't move. A cold, terrifying thought had rooted me to the spot. They didn't just have my bank account number. My father was the custodian on the account, yes. That was how he drained the cash. But they had everything else, too. I closed my eyes and pictured the admin drawer in the kitchen. It was the third drawer down on the left, next to the refrigerator. It was where my mother kept the takeout menus, the spare batteries, and the flashlight that never worked. But in the back of that drawer in a metal organizer were the family's vital records. My birth certificate, my social security card, my passport, the deed to my car, which was technically in my name but stored there for safekeeping. If they felt entitled to my cash, if they could look me in the eye and say they spent $35,000 because no one needed it, what else did they feel entitled to? My stomach twisted. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to roll down the window and gulp in the cold, wet air. Identity theft. The words floated in my mind. Usually, you worry about strangers. You worry about hackers in a dark room somewhere halfway across the world. You don't worry about the people who taught you how to tie your shoes. But they had already proven they didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a resource. I was an asset to be liquidated when the promising one needed something. If I left those documents there, what would stop them? When the cash ran out, and it would run out because Noah was a bottomless pit of need, what would they do next? Open a credit card in my name, take out a line of credit, lease a car. I looked at the house down the street. The front porch light was on. The blue flicker of the television glowed in the living room window. They were in there, probably finishing their lunch, probably complaining about how dramatic I was. They felt safe. They thought I was gone. I couldn't leave, not without my identity. I shifted the car into drive, but I didn't turn on my headlights. I let the car roll forward slowly, inching back toward the driveway. I didn't want them to hear the engine. I parked on the street, just past the edge of our lawn, hidden behind the large oak tree that grew on the neighbor's property. I turned off the ignition. The silence inside the car was sudden and heavy. I opened the door and stepped out into the rain. I didn't have a hood. I didn't care. The cold water soaked my hair instantly, running down my neck and into my collar. It felt grounding. It woke me up. I walked up the driveway, avoiding the loose brick on the path that always clicked loudly when you stepped on it. I knew every sound this house made. I knew which floorboards creaked. I knew how to turn the doorknob so the latch didn't click. I had spent 20 years trying to move through this house without being noticed, without disturbing the peace, without drawing attention to myself. Now, that training was going to save me. I reached the front door. I pulled my keys from my pocket. My hand was shaking, the metal keys jingling softly. I clamped my hand over them to silence the noise. I took a deep breath. Just get the papers. Get the papers and get out. I slid the key into the lock. I turned it slowly. Click. I pushed the door open. The house was warm. It smelled like pot roast and lemon polish, the smell of a happy home. It made me want to scream. It was a lie. This house wasn't a home. It was a bank vault where I was the currency. I could hear the television. It was loud. A laugh track from a sitcom blared from the living room. Pass the popcorn, I heard my father say. His voice was relaxed, heavy. Did you put enough butter on it? Noah asked. Of course, my mother replied. I made it just how you like it. They were eating popcorn. They were watching TV. 10 minutes ago, I had been standing in the kitchen, trembling, realizing I was destitute. And they had just moved on to snack time. The rage that flared in my chest was white-hot. It burned away the fear. How dare they? How dare they be so comfortable? I slipped off my wet shoes so I wouldn't squeak on the hardwood floors. I moved in my socks, a ghost in my own house. I crept down the hallway, hugging the wall. The kitchen was to the left, the living room to the right. The lights in the kitchen were off, which was perfect. I slipped into the kitchen. It was gray and shadowy, lit only by the spillover light from the hallway and the faint glow of the street lamp outside the window. I moved to the drawer. Third one down. Left side. I reached for the handle. I pulled, squeak. The sound was like a siren in the quiet kitchen. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. What was that? Mom's voice cut through the sitcom laughter. I stopped breathing. I pressed myself against the refrigerator, making myself as flat as possible. What? Dad asked. I heard a noise, in the kitchen. Probably the ice maker, Dad said dismissively. Or the wind. It's storming out there, Linda. Relax, I don't know, Mom hesitated. It sounded like a drawer. Who would be opening a drawer? Dad laughed. Avery's gone. She stormed off to go pout in her little apartment. Nobody is here, watch the movie. Avery's gone. She went to pout, that's what they thought. That my devastation was just a tantrum, that my financial ruin was just me being difficult. I waited 5 full seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When the TV laughter swelled again, I pulled the drawer the rest of the way open. I looked inside. It was a mess. Old rubber bands, coupons for pizza places that went out of business years ago, broken pens. I dug through the junk, my hands moving fast. I found the metal organizer in the back. I flipped through the files. Car insurance. House deed. Warranties, there, a blue envelope. I opened it, my birth certificate. The raised seal felt rough under my thumb. My social security card was paperclipped to it. My passport was underneath. I grabbed them. I shoved them into my purse, burying them deep. Okay, I have them, I'm safe. I was about to close the drawer. I was about to leave. But then I saw it. Tucked way in the back, behind the organizer, flat against the bottom of the drawer, was a manila folder. It looked newer than the others. The tab was crisp. And it had my name on it. Avery Renovation. I frowned. Renovation? I wasn't renovating anything. I rented a studio apartment. I couldn't even paint the walls without losing my security deposit. Curiosity, cold and sharp, pricked at my neck. I shouldn't touch it, I should leave. I had my identity papers, I should go, but I couldn't. I reached back and pulled the folder out. I held it up to the dim light coming from the window. I opened it. It was a loan application. A bank document from a lender I recognized, a predatory lender, the kind that sends junk mail with high interest rates. I scanned the page. Applicant name, Avery Marie Miller. Social security number, my number. Employment, junior copywriter. Annual income, $48,000. They had filled out all my information, correctly. They had used my old pay stubs, which were probably still in my old bedroom, to verify my income. I looked at the loan amount. Requested amount, $50,000. Purpose of loan, home improvement/debt consolidation. $50,000. My knees almost gave out. I had to grab the counter to stay upright. $50,000. That was more than I made in a year. That was a debt that would crush me. That was a debt that would mean I would never buy a house, never get a new car, never escape the cycle of poverty. I flipped the page. Status, approved. Pending final signature. They had been approved. The bank was ready to send the check. All they needed was the signature. I looked at the bottom of the last page. There was a signature line, and there in blue ink was a signature, Avery Miller. I stared at it. It looked like my signature. It really did. But the tail of the Y curled up too much. I curled mine down, and the A was too looped. It was my mother's handwriting. I had seen her practice handwriting before. She used to practice calligraphy for wedding invitations. She was good at copying styles. She had forged my signature. This wasn't just theft. This wasn't just borrowing money from a savings account my father had access to. This was a crime. This was a felony. They weren't just taking what I had saved. They were actively selling my future. They were going to take this $50,000, probably give it to Noah or use it to pay off their own debts and leave me with the bill. They were going to let me default. They were going to let my credit score crash and burn. They were going to ruin me, completely and utterly, just to keep their golden boy comfortable. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. But it wasn't a sad tear. It was hot. It was angry. The betrayal finally hit the bottom. I thought I had hit the bottom when I saw the empty bank account. But that was just the surface. This was the bottom. They didn't love me. You don't do this to someone you love. You don't saddle someone you love with a lifetime of debt. You don't steal their name. You don't commit a crime against them while eating popcorn in the next room. They were predators, and I was the prey. I closed the folder. My hands were trembling, but not from fear anymore, from adrenaline. I wasn't going to leave this here. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I took a picture of the drawer. I took a picture of the folder sitting in the drawer. I took a picture of the forged signature. Then I put the folder in my purse, right next to my birth certificate. I closed the drawer. I didn't care if it squeaked this time. Squeak. There it is again, Mom said. Robert, go check the kitchen. Fine, fine, Dad grumbled. I heard the recliner snap shut. I heard his heavy footsteps coming toward the hallway. I didn't run. I moved quickly, silently to the back door, the sliding glass door that led to the patio. I unlocked it. I slid it open just wide enough to squeeze through. The cold air hit me again. I stepped out onto the patio. I slid the door closed behind me, leaving it unlocked. I pressed myself against the brick wall of the house, standing in the dark in the rain. Through the glass, I saw the kitchen light flip on. My father walked into the room. He looked around. He looked annoyed. He opened the fridge and grabbed a beer. He looked at the admin drawer. He didn't open it. He turned off the light and walked back to the living room. Nothing, Linda, I heard him say. Just the wind rattling the sliding door. It was unlocked. I locked it. I stood there in the rain for a full minute, clutching my purse against my chest. I had the evidence. I had the truth. They thought they had stripped me bare. They thought they had taken everything. But they had made a mistake. They got greedy, and they left a paper trail. I walked back to my car, the mud squelching under my socks. I didn't care about my shoes left by the front door. They could keep them. I got into my car. I threw the purse onto the passenger seat like it was a weapon. I started the engine. I turned on the headlights. The beams cut through the darkness. I wasn't going back to my apartment. I wasn't going to hide under my covers and cry. I put the car in drive. I had somewhere else to go, someone who needed to see this. Someone who knew the law better than anyone. I was going to Grandpa's, and I was bringing the storm with me. The drive to Grandpa Arthur's house usually took 40 minutes. That night, I made it in 30. I drove with a singular focus. The rain was still coming down in sheets, but I barely noticed it. My mind was racing, replaying the image of that signature. Avery Miller. Written by my mother's hand. It was the ultimate violation. My name, the name they gave me, was being used as a tool to dig my grave. Grandpa lived in an old, brick colonial on the outskirts of town. It was a house that matched him. Sturdy, intimidating, and built to last. He lived alone now, ever since Grandma passed 5 years ago. He was a retired Superior Court judge. Growing up, he had terrified me. He was strict. He didn't tolerate nonsense. He didn't do baby talk. But he was fair. If Noah broke a rule, Noah got punished. If I broke a rule, I got punished. Grandpa didn't care that Noah was a boy or that he was promising. Justice to Grandpa was blind. I pulled into his gravel driveway, the stones crunching loudly under my tires. The house was dark except for a single light in the study. He was awake. He was always awake. I grabbed my purse, shielding it from the rain with my body, and ran to the front porch. I pounded on the heavy oak door. Bang, bang, bang. Grandpa, I yelled. Grandpa, it's Avery, I waited. I heard the heavy deadbolt slide back. The door swung open. Grandpa stood there. He was wearing his dark blue bathrobe and his reading glasses were perched on the end of his nose. He looked at me, wet hair plastered to my face, shivering, eyes wild, clutching my purse like a lifeline. He didn't look surprised, he looked concerned. Avery, his voice was deep like gravel rolling in a drum. It's 10 o'clock at night, what's happened? I need help, I choked out. I think a crime has been committed. Grandpa's eyes sharpened instantly. The concern vanished, replaced by the alert intensity of a judge taking the bench. He stepped back and opened the door wide. Come inside, he commanded. Out of the rain. I stepped into the warm foyer. It smelled of old books and pipe tobacco. It was a smell that usually comforted me, but tonight I was vibrating too hard to be comforted. Take off those wet socks, he said. He pointed to the bench by the door. I'll get you a towel. I did as I was told. I peeled off my muddy socks. Grandpa returned a moment later with a thick towel and a pair of his own wool slippers. They were huge on me, but they were warm. The study, he said. We walked into his study. It was lined floor to ceiling with law books. His massive mahogany desk sat in the center. He pointed to the leather armchair. Sit, I sat. I was still shivering, despite the warmth. Grandpa went to the small bar in the corner. He poured a small amount of amber liquid into a glass. Brandy. He handed it to me. Drink, he said. It will stop the shaking. I took a sip. It burned my throat, but the warmth spread through my chest. Grandpa sat down behind his desk. He folded his hands in front of him. He looked at me over his glasses. Now, he said, tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Omit nothing. I took a deep breath. I went to check my savings account on Tuesday, I started. I was going to put a down payment on a condo. I had saved $35,000 over 7 years. Grandpa nodded. A significant sum. You worked hard for it. It's gone, I said. The balance was $42. Grandpa's face didn't move. Bank error. No, I said. My father is the custodian on the account. He withdrew it, all of it. Over the last 3 months. Did you speak to him? Yes, I said. Today I went to the house. I confronted them. Dad admitted it. He said they used it for Noah for his tuition for a new laptop. Grandpa's jaw tightened. A small muscle in his cheek twitched. And what was his justification? He said, my voice broke, and I had to stop to steady it. He said Noah needed opportunities. He said I was already fine. He said my stability meant I didn't need the help. Grandpa closed his eyes for a second. He let out a slow, heavy breath through his nose. Penalizing the responsible to subsidize the irresponsible, he murmured. A classic failure of logic. He opened his eyes. Is that the crime you spoke of? Theft by a custodian is actionable civilly, but difficult if the account terms were loose. No, I said. That's not why I'm here. That was just the start. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the manila folder. The edges were slightly damp from the rain. I placed it on the pristine surface of his desk. I went back to the house tonight, I said. I went to get my birth certificate because I didn't trust them with my identity anymore. I found this in the admin drawer. Grandpa reached out and took the folder. He opened it. The room was silent, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the rustle of paper as Grandpa turned the pages. He read the loan application. He read the income verification. He read the terms. Then he reached the last page. He stared at the signature. He stared at it for a long time. Did you sign this? He asked. He didn't look up. No, I said. Did you authorize this application? No. Did you know about this application? I found it an hour ago. Grandpa looked up. His eyes were cold, not at me, at the situation. It was a look of pure, icy fury. This is your mother's handwriting, he stated. It wasn't a question. He knew her handwriting better than anyone. Yes, I whispered. The date is yesterday. It is approved pending final verification. Yes. Grandpa closed the folder. He placed both hands flat on top of it as if trapping a poisonous insect. This is fraud, he said. His voice was dangerously quiet. This is forgery. This is identity theft, and given the amount, it is a felony. He stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the rain. He looked older, suddenly tired. But when he turned back, the tiredness was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. They are my family, he said softly. My daughter, my grandson, but you are my family too, Avery. He walked back to the desk and sat down heavily. A family that eats its young is not a family, he said. It is a pack of wolves, and I will not have wolves in my bloodline. He pulled a yellow legal pad toward him. He picked up a fountain pen. We are going to stop this, he said. Tonight, I don't know what to do, I confessed. I don't want to go to the police. I don't want Mom to go to prison. I want my life back. I want my money back. I want to be safe. Prison is a last resort, Grandpa said, writing something down. But the threat of prison, that is a powerful tool, and we are going to use it. He looked at me. Do you trust me? Yes, I said. More than anyone. Then listen to me. We are going to lock them down. He picked up the phone on his desk. First, we are calling the credit bureaus. We are freezing your credit immediately. No one, not even you, will be able to take out a loan for the next 24 hours. He handed me the phone. Do it. I have the numbers here. I dialed. I went through the automated systems. I froze everything. Experian. TransUnion, Equifax. When I hung up, Grandpa was still writing. Second, he said, we are going to prepare a document, an admission of guilt and a repayment plan. They won't sign it, I said. Dad thinks he's entitled to my money. He thinks he owns me. He thinks he owns you, Grandpa corrected. He knows he does not own me, and he knows that I know the district attorney personally. I play golf with him on Sundays. Grandpa looked at the folder again. Your father loves money, Grandpa said. He loves status. He loves his boat. He loves the appearance of success. He fears losing those things more than he loves you. It is a hard truth, Avery, but we must face it. I nodded. It hurt, but I knew it was true. We will use that fear, Grandpa said. He looked at his calendar. Next Friday, he said, I will invite them to dinner. Here, a dinner, I asked, recoiling. I can't eat with them, Grandpa. I can't look at them. You won't have to eat, Grandpa said grimly. And they won't have an appetite. He leaned forward. I will tell them I am making changes to my estate planning. I will tell them there is a distribution to be discussed. They will come running. Greed will bring them right to this table. And then, Grandpa said, tapping the folder. We dropped the hammer. He stood up and walked over to me. He placed his heavy hand on my shoulder. You have spent your whole life making yourself small so there would be room for them, he said. You have starved so they could feast. That ends tonight. He squeezed my shoulder. You are not the victim anymore, Avery. You are the plaintiff, and I am your counsel. I looked up at him. For the first time in days, the crushing weight on my chest lightened. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the invisible girl crying in the dark. I had a champion. Go upstairs to the guest room, Grandpa said gently. Sleep, you look exhausted. I will stay up and draft the documents. Grandpa, I asked as I stood up. Yes, why? I asked. Why are you helping me? You always seem to like Noah more too. Everyone does. Grandpa looked shocked. Like Noah more, Avery, Noah's a fool. He is charming, yes, but he is weak. He has no spine because your parents removed it to make him easier to coddle. He looked me right in the eyes. I have watched you, he said. I watched you walk to school in the snow. I watched you work those double shifts. I watched you build a life out of nothing, with no help, no praise, no encouragement. You are the strongest person in this family, Avery. I didn't help you before because I thought you didn't need me. I thought you were thriving. He sighed. I was wrong. Even the strong need protection, and I am sorry I waited until they stole from you to give it. I nodded, tears pricking my eyes again. Go to sleep, he said. We have a war to win. I went upstairs. I climbed into the guest bed. I pulled the heavy quilt up to my chin. Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside I was safe. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing to fight back. Friday arrived with a cold, gray sky. It matched the feeling in my stomach. I had spent the week staying in Grandpa's guest room, going to work, and coming straight back. I hadn't answered a single text from my mother. She had sent plenty. Where are you? Stop being dramatic. We need to talk about your attitude. I deleted them all. I wasn't talking. I was waiting. Grandpa had set the stage perfectly. He told my parents that dinner was at 7 p.m. sharp. He told them the topic was estate distribution and family assets. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was dangling a carrot. My parents loved money almost as much as they loved Noah. The idea that Grandpa might be handing out early inheritance checks was enough to make them forget everything else. At 6:45 p.m., I sat in the living room. I was wearing a simple black dress. I felt like I was dressing for a funeral. In a way, I was burying the hope that I would ever have a normal family. Grandpa walked in. He looked imposing. He wore his best charcoal suit and a tie. He held his cane, though he stood tall without it. Are you ready? He asked. I think so, I said. My hands were cold. Remember, he said, you have nothing to apologize for. You are the judge today, they are the defendants. At 7 p.m. exactly, the doorbell rang. I heard their voices in the foyer. My father's booming laugh, fake and loud. My mother's high-pitched chatter. Noah's mumbled greetings. They walked into the living room. When they saw me, the air left the room. Avery, Mom said, her smile faltering. She clutched her purse tighter. You're here, we were worried. Worried? I asked. Or annoyed that I wasn't answering so you could yell at me. Now, Dad stepped in, smoothing his tie. Let's not start the evening with hostility. We're here for a nice dinner with Arthur. He turned to Grandpa, beaming. Hi, Arthur. You're looking well. Sit down, Grandpa said. He didn't smile. He pointed to the dining room table. The table was set, but not for dinner. There were no plates, no silverware. Just a pitcher of water, 4 glasses, and a single manila folder sitting at the head of the table. My parents exchanged a confused look, but they sat. Dad sat on one side, Mom next to him. Noah sat opposite them. I sat next to Noah. Grandpa took the head of the table. Where's the food? Noah asked, looking around. I'm starving. There is no food tonight, Grandpa said. His voice was calm but heavy. Tonight is a business meeting. Dad leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. He thought this was it, the money talk. Business, Dad said. Excellent. We've been thinking a lot about the future, Arthur. Noah's master's program is going to be a game changer for the family name. Yes, Mom added eagerly. He's doing so well, we're just so proud. I'm sure you are, Grandpa said. He placed his hand on the folder. I called you here to discuss assets. Specifically, I want to talk about how this family funds its investments. Dad nodded vigorously. Investments are key. You have to spend money to make money, right? Indeed, Grandpa said. Avery, would you open the folder, please? I reached out. My hand was steady now. I opened the folder. Inside were the bank statements I had printed, highlighting the theft, and the loan application I had stolen from the kitchen drawer. Read the first highlighted item, Avery, Grandpa commanded. I picked up the sheet. August 12th, I read aloud. My voice rang clear in the empty room. Transfer from savings account ending in 4490. Amount: $5,000. Transferred to joint checking. Memo: Noah tuition deposit. The smile froze on my father's face. It didn't disappear, it just turned into a mask. September 1st, I continued. Transfer from savings account ending in 4490. Amount: $8,500. Transferred to university bursar. Mom shifted in her seat. She looked at Dad. Dad stared at the table. September 15th, I read. Withdrawal debit card, Best Buy, amount $2,200. I put the paper down and looked at Noah. That's your laptop, Noah, I said. The one with the great graphics card. I paid for it. Noah looked at me, then at Dad. Wait, Dad, you said you got a bonus. You said the company paid for that. Dad cleared his throat. It's complicated, Noah. Financials are complicated. It's not complicated, Grandpa cut in. It is theft. Arthur, please, Dad said, his face turning red. Theft is a strong word. I am the custodian on that account. It was family money. We needed liquidity. It was Avery's money, Grandpa snapped. Money she earned, money she saved, while you bought a new boat, Robert, while you went on vacation to Cabo. We paid for everything for her growing up, Mom burst out. Food, clothes, shelter, we are her parents. She owes us. She owes you nothing, Grandpa roared. He slammed his hand on the table, making the water glasses jump. You chose to have children. You are obligated to provide for them. They are not obligated to be your piggy bank. Grandpa picked up the second document, the loan application. But the savings account, Grandpa said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. That was just greed, this. This is a felony. He slid the loan application across the table. It stopped in front of Mom. Explain this, Grandpa said. Mom looked down. She saw the paper. She saw the signature. Her face went gray. She stammered. We were going to pay it back, I swear. We just needed a bridge loan. You forged her signature, Grandpa said. You stole her identity. You applied for $50,000 in her name without her knowledge. We didn't submit it yet, Dad argued. It was just paperwork. It was approved pending signature, Grandpa said. And the signature is there. Linda signed it. If Avery hadn't found it, you would have mailed it today. We needed the money, Dad said, sounding desperate now. Noah's expenses are high. The master's program, the housing, it adds up. Then tell Noah to get a job, Grandpa yelled. We all froze. Grandpa never yelled at Noah. Grandpa turned his eyes on Noah. You are 22 years old. Why are you letting your sister pay your way? Why are you letting your parents steal from her so you can have a fancy computer? Noah looked terrified. He shrank in his chair. I didn't know, Grandpa, I swear. They told me they had it covered. I didn't know it was Avery's money. Well, now you know, Grandpa said. Your laptop, stolen money. Your tuition, stolen money. Your apartment deposit, stolen money. Noah looked at me. He looked sick. Ave. Is that true? Yes, I said quietly. They drained my account. I have $42 left to my name. Noah put his head in his hands. This ends now, Grandpa said. He pulled a stapled document from the back of the folder. This is a repayment agreement, Grandpa said. I drafted it myself. It states that you, Robert and Linda Miller, acknowledge a debt of $35,000 to Avery Miller. $35,000, Dad sputtered. We can't pay that right now. We don't have that kind of liquid cash. Then you will make it, Grandpa said. You will sell the boat. The boat? Dad looked like he'd been shot. Arthur, that's my pride and joy. I can't sell the boat. Then you will go to prison, Grandpa said calmly. The room went dead silent. Excuse me, Mom whispered. If you do not sign this agreement, Grandpa said, I will pick up this phone. I will call the district attorney. I will hand him the forged loan application and the bank records. You will be charged with fraud, identity theft, and larceny. My parents stared at him. They looked for a crack in his armor. They looked for a sign that he was bluffing. There was none. Grandpa sat like a stone statue of justice. You wouldn't do that to family, Dad said weakly. You are the ones who did this to family, Grandpa countered. You ate your own child's future. I am just balancing the scales. He pushed the pen across the table. Sign it. You will pay Avery $2,000 a month until the debt is cleared. Plus 5% interest. Interest? Mom cried. That's cruel. It's business, Grandpa said cold. Sign or I call. Dad looked at the phone. He looked at Grandpa. He looked at me. His eyes were full of hate, not regret, hate. He hated me for exposing him. He hated me for having power. He picked up the pen. He signed his name hard, ripping the paper slightly. He shoved the paper to Mom. Mom was crying. Avery, please, stop this. Tell him to stop. We're your parents. I looked at her. I remembered the hunger. I remembered the cold walk to school. I remembered the empty bank account. Sign it, Mom, I said. She sobbed, but she signed. Grandpa took the paper back. He checked the signatures. He nodded. One more thing, Grandpa said. My will. My parents looked up. I am changing it tomorrow, Grandpa said. Previously, the estate was to be divided between you, Linda, and your brother. Now, your share is gone. Dad, Mom screamed. You can't. It is done, Grandpa said. My estate will go to Avery. She's the only one in this family who knows the value of $1 and the value of truth. You're cutting us off? Dad asked, stunned. For her, I am cutting you off because you are thieves, Grandpa said. Get out of my house. But, dinner? Noah asked weakly. There is no dinner for you, Grandpa said. Go home, sell the boat. Make the first payment by the 1st of the month, or the police get the file. My parents stood up. They didn't look at me. They walked out of the room, their heads down, defeated and furious. Noah lingered for a second. He looked at me. Avery, Go, Noah, I said. Just go. He nodded and followed them. When the front door closed, the house fell silent. Grandpa let out a long breath. He slumped slightly in his chair. He looked tired. Are you okay? I asked. He looked at me and smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. I am fine, he said. I just took out the trash. I reached out and took his hand. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, he said. Just promise me one thing. Promise me you will never let anyone treat you like that again. I promise, I said. And I meant it. The aftermath of the dinner wasn't an explosion. It was a long, slow burn. My parents didn't speak to me. The silence from them was different this time. Before, their silence was neglect. They ignored me because I didn't matter. Now, their silence was punishment. They were trying to freeze me out, hoping I would feel guilty and come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. I didn't crawl, I stood tall. I moved out of my tiny apartment. With Grandpa's help, I found a better rental, a secure one-bedroom in a nice building with a doorman. I needed to feel safe. I needed to know that nobody could walk in with a key they shouldn't have. On the 1st of the month, I checked my new bank account. Deposit, $2,000. Source, Robert Miller. The money was there. 2 days later, I drove past my parents' house. I didn't go in. I just drove by slowly. There in the driveway sat the boat, but it had a bright orange and black sign taped to the windshield, for sale. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't joy, exactly. It was satisfaction. It was the feeling of the world finally tilting back on its axis. That boat represented every weekend my father spent ignoring me. It represented the money they claimed they didn't have for my braces or my school trips. Now, it was being sold to pay me back. Justice was ugly, but it was necessary. I started receiving texts from extended family. My aunts and uncles. Avery, your mother is devastated. She says you've hired a lawyer and are suing them. Is this true? We heard you made your father sell his boat. That's very vindictive, Avery. They were spinning the story. Of course they were. They were telling everyone that I was the greedy daughter, the ungrateful child attacking her poor, aging parents. They left out the theft. They left out the forgery. I didn't argue. I didn't try to defend myself. I realized that anyone who believed them without asking me for my side wasn't worth my time. I changed my phone number. I only gave the new number to Grandpa and my boss. 2 weeks later, I was leaving work when I saw someone waiting by the entrance of my office building. It was Noah. He was wearing his old hoodie, holding a coffee cup. He looked tired. He looked smaller than I remembered. I stopped. What are you doing here, Noah? I wanted to talk, he said. I tried calling, but your number is disconnected. I changed it, I said, to keep the drama out. Can we just get a coffee? He asked. 5 minutes. Please, I looked at him. He wasn't aggressive, he looked defeated. 5 minutes, I said. We sat on a bench nearby. Dad sold the boat, Noah said. He's miserable, he just sits in the den and drinks scotch. He dug his own grave, I said. I know, Noah said quickly. I'm not defending him, I wanted to tell you that I quit the master's program. I looked at him in surprise. You quit? Yeah, he said. I can't afford it, not without Dad paying, and, honestly, I didn't even want to do it. Dad wanted me to do it. He wanted to be able to brag that his son had a master's degree. I just wanted to work in graphic design. He took a sip of his coffee. I got a job, he said. It's entry-level, it pays crap, but it's mine. I'm paying my own rent now. I moved into a studio with 3 roommates. He looked at me and his eyes were wet. I'm sorry, Avery. I really am. I was a parasite. I let them put me on a pedestal, and I stood on your shoulders to get there. I didn't look down to see who I was stepping on. It was the first time Noah had ever been real with me. The first time he wasn't the golden boy, but just a brother. Thank you for saying that, I said. I'm going to pay you back too, he said, for the laptop and the tuition money they took. It might take me a long time, but I'll pay you back my share. You don't have to, I said. Mom and Dad are on the hook legally. I know, Noah said, but I want to. For my own conscience. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. Here, he said, it's $200. It's all I have left after rent this month, but it's a start. I took the envelope. It felt heavy. Not because of the money, but because of what it meant. Noah was waking up. Okay, I said. I accept it. We sat there for a moment in silence. They hate you, you know, Noah said quietly. Mom and Dad, they talk about you like you're a monster. They say you destroyed the family. I didn't destroy it, I said. I just stopped holding it up, Noah nodded. I know, I tried to tell them that. They won't listen. They live in their own world. He stood up. I'm not going to be like them, Avery, I promise. I hope not, I said. He walked away. I watched him go. He walked differently now, less confident maybe, but more real. He was carrying his own weight for the first time. The months rolled on. The checks kept coming. Grandpa checked in on me every Sunday. We had dinner. Real dinners. He taught me about investing. He helped me plan for the future. You are building a foundation, he told me. A house built on rock, not sand. I heard through the grapevine that my parents had to refinance their house. They had to cancel their country club membership. Their social status, which they valued above all else, was crumbling. They were embarrassed. They stopped going to parties because they couldn't brag anymore. It was a quiet revenge. I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to slash tires. I just had to exist, succeed, and hold them to the agreement. Their punishment was living with the consequences of their own actions. And for people like them, who had always felt entitled to everything, having to pay for their mistakes was the worst torture imaginable. I felt lighter. The anger that had burned inside me for years was cooling into something solid. Resolve, I was no longer the victim. I was the architect of my own life, and every brick I laid was mine. A year had passed. It was a Tuesday evening. I stood on the balcony of my new condo. It was mine. The deed was in my name. The down payment had come from the money my parents returned to me, plus the money I had saved from my new, higher-paying job. The city lights twinkled below me. It was beautiful. I held a mug of tea in my hands. I listened to the sounds of the city. Sirens, traffic, distant music. It felt alive. Inside, my apartment was quiet, but it was a good quiet. When I was a kid, the silence in my house was scary. It was the silence of walking on eggshells. It was the silence of holding your breath, hoping nobody would notice you, hoping nobody would criticize you. It was a lonely, cold silence. This silence was different. It was peaceful. It was the silence of safety. I walked back inside. I looked at my living room. I had bought a gray sofa. I had bought a soft rug. I had a bookshelf filled with books I actually wanted to read, not books I bought to impress anyone. I walked to my desk. I opened my laptop. I logged into my bank account. Balance, $52,400. It was safe. Nobody had the password. Nobody had access. I thought about the girl I used to be. The girl who ate the brown banana because she wasn't worth a fresh pancake. The girl who walked in the snow. The girl who desperately wanted her father to look at her and smile. I felt a pang of sadness for her. She had tried so hard. She had loved them so much, but I wasn't her anymore. I had realized something profound over the last year. My parents didn't break me. They thought they could. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They thought I was a resource to be used because I was compliant. But they were wrong. The neglect didn't make me weak. It made me self-sufficient. The silence didn't make me invisible. It made me observant. The lack of help didn't make me fail. It made me resourceful. They had unintentionally trained me to survive without them. I picked up my phone. I had a text from Noah. Noah, hey, just sent another $300. Got a raise at work. I smiled. I texted back, proud of you, and I was. He was becoming a decent man. We would never be best friends, probably. The history was too messy. But we were allies. We were survivors of the same shipwreck. I hadn't spoken to my parents in a year. Grandpa told me they were still bitter. They still played the victim. They told anyone who would listen that I had abandoned them in their old age. Let them talk. Their words couldn't reach me up here. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at myself. My eyes were clear. My shoulders were back. I didn't look scared anymore. I had forgiven myself. I had forgiven myself for letting them treat me that way for so long. I forgave myself for craving their love. It wasn't my fault. Every child wants to be loved. But I also accepted that I would never get it. And that was okay. I had Grandpa's love. I had Noah's respect. And most importantly, I had my own back. I was whole. I was complete. I didn't need them to complete me. I walked back out to the balcony. I took a deep breath of the cool night air. The war was over. I had won. But the prize wasn't the money. The prize was the freedom. I was free from their expectations. I was free from their drama. I was free from the weight of being the lesser child. I was Avery Miller, and I was enough.